cumulative, it can go to the higher authorization committee. Now, one thing more in the Act which is given, which is very important for us to know. I think Dr. Krishna Kumar mentioned about this, and that is we call as duty. It is given in the law. It is a duty of RMP. RMP is basically the person who is in charge of the hospital, whether it's a medical superintendent, whether it's a dean or the director of the hospital. Okay, it is his duty and the intensivist working in that hospital to ascertain from the person in the ICU if there is a potential donor, whether the family willing to donate, whether the person has expressed his or pledged his organs, and then finally proceed from there. Now, to me, duty, because I worked in the government jobs, I think duty itself means mandatory. Because we all know that if it is defined that this is your duty, you cannot say there is no mandatory word, so I will not do it. So there is no need for having a mandatory word separate from it. Duty means it is a mandatory part of this. So it is a duty of everybody. And it applies also to the hospital which are not recognized for the transplant activity. So basically, every hospital in the country which has got ICU, which is treating the patient with the neurological injuries and have potential donor, have to talk to the family about the organ donation and identify these potential donors. So there is no excuse for any hospital whether I am recognized or I am not recognized. Okay. Now coming to the point proper, that is the what type of the hospitals which are recognized. One is the transplant hospital, which want to do the transplant, whether renal transplant, heart transplant, lung transplant, pancreas, small bowel, or the liver transplant. And there are hospitals which are of a smaller caliber, don't have facilities for doing the transplant, don't have the manpower to do the transplant, but they also treat the head injury or the CBA patients. So they are potential donors in their ICU. So these are called the non-transplant organ retrieval centers. And this is one thing which has come in 2011 amended act, which was not there in 1994 original act. So the registration of the hospital which are engaged in the transplantation, that has to be done. There has to be certification of registration, and of course how it can be challenged or. And same way, the NTORC have to also be registered. And which are the NTORC? It clearly says which has adequate facility for treating a seriously ill patient who can be potential donor for organs in the event of death. So it doesn't give the number of beds in the hospital or number of beds in the ICU. It has got a facility, that means there should be ICU, there should be operation theater. Okay. And it also defines the transplant coordinator. Okay. And this is very important. The transplant coordinator, it is mandatory in the law that if you want to get recognition either as a transplant hospital or the NTORC, you have to appoint a transplant coordinator. Okay, that one should always remember. And this transplant coordinator can come from the background of the medical social workers, or can be even the doctors. Some of the doctors who are in administration can take up this job, or that some senior nurses can take up the job. Okay. Now, what are the requirements? So there is manpower and there are departments. Okay. If you look at the hospitals, have to have an ICU, operation theaters, the blood bank, the adequate pathology lab, radiology, and the dialysis facility. Now, this is must for getting at least the renal transplant recognition. And then you have a transplant team, which will be organ specific, where will be surgical team, the anesthetist, the physicians, that is the either hepatologist or the nephrologist, trained technician, and the nursing staff. Now, this is for the transplant. Now, what we are talking about to get the organ for transplant. And that's where you have to have a VSD certifying team, which includes the intensivists, the neurologists, neurosurgeons, other clinicians who can certify the brain death, and the transplant coordinators. The most important person in the whole of the thing is the head of the institution. He is in the driver of the whole program. So at the hospital level, one should form different committee, and one is the, to me, is most important, the transplant coordination committee under chair of the administrative head of the hospital, which should include the intensivist, transplant coordinator, anesthetist, neurospecialist, and the nursing head, which should be the core team to drive this. Then, of course, you should have ICU committee, the brain death committee. Dr. Rahul Pandit will talk about all those things, and Dr. Ishwar also. Then you have to have a transplant team, which will be organ-wise, a social service committee, which will be also acting as a grief counselor, and finally the local authorization committee. The process of registration is basically you have to fulfill the basic criteria, manpower criteria, apply, make an application to the state appropriate authority, and once after inspection it is cleared, the license is issued. So there are two types of forms. One for the transplant hospital, that is form number 12. I will not go into detail of that. And for NTORC, it is form number 13, which has to be filled completely. All the information has to be given. So to summarize the whole thing, that if you want to start a transplant or NTORC program in your hospital, you should have a sensitized hospital administration, doctors and nurses towards the need for disease organ donation. That's what we are talking about today. You have to organize the stakeholders meet, which include the critical care, neurosurgery, neurology, transplant team, medical administration, nursing, and the transplant, and then apply for registration depending on what are the facilities, either transplant center or NTORC, and then organize the workshop, what we are doing today under the aegis of the NOTTO for training of the BSD team as well as training of the transplant coordinator. Now, few myths I want to talk about. If I ask you, there is a myth that the attitude of the public in India towards the organ donation, where will you place in the world? Some people must have seen the slide. Where will you place India in the world map?
One of the best people.
One of the world's
One of the best.
best. Yes. Though our organ donation rate per million population is less, but remember, we are competing with the people, nations who are 50 years ahead of us. So it will take time to catch up. But there is a good news which I will talk. So if you look at the attitude toward the organ donation, this is independent study. We are second in the world. Attitude to organ donation. This is we are all talking about disease organ donation, not living donation. So that we should remember. And this was a study which was published in 2018, so it's not very old study. Okay, just two. Okay, and we look at the disease organ donation which is going on in the country. Yes, southwest is dark green, all right. But I'm very happy to announce today from this podium that these three dots, which are lighter green, are slowly turning into dark green. That is Delhi, the Chandigarh, and to an extent some Jaipur also. So that is good news. And across the country, things are improving. Okay. To me, disease organ donation equivalent to sacrifice by the soldiers on the border, and it should be celebrated like that. And as a medical profession, we should take this cause because I feel this is our medico-social responsibility. Thank you for your kind attention. Yeah, sure.
If there are any questions from the audience, you would like to take them now.
Any questions?
Okay. Thank you. Okay, question. Yeah, please.
Sir, I wanted to ask you, in an ICU, if there is a brain dead patient, first is we should identify the brain death, and 100% of the cases, if you're in ICU, you're working in ICU, you're supposed to get inform the higher authorities and the committee and go for, we have to mandatorily talk to the relatives regarding the organ donation. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. So basically, you look at you do the audit of all the deaths in the ICU. So that is a retrospective study. Identify out of that what was the neurological. See, we have this culture that every person died, he dies of cardiopulmonary arrest. Okay, but that is general. He has got a basic some disease of which leads to that cardiopulmonary arrest as a terminal event. So we have got something. We are talking about the neurological deaths. Okay, so out of that, filter out neurological deaths. That means the patient admitted with devastated neurological injuries, whether it is because of tumor, whether it is because of trauma, or whether it is because of the stroke. Now, in those cases, those are the ones which are mandatory to be informed to the higher authority. Those are the cases, once you know it is GCS and the potential donor. I don't want to go into that because my subsequent speakers are going to talk about that. Once you identify that, then it is mandatory that you talk to the family, whether the person is pledged or they are willing. But this process will be explained to you subsequently. It is not like a blunt thing that you just break the news, it's a potential brain death and will you donate the organ? No. Identification of potential brain death is important. But then there is a subsequent process which will be talked about by the subsequent speakers. Yes. Yeah.
We need to decouple organ donation and brain death. The most important aspect where we all get confused is that we actually take both the things in the same issue. That's not the point. The point is that we need to identify patients who are brainstem death and declare them dead like any other person you would with a cardiorespiratory arrest. After that, whether the organ donation happens or not is a secondary aspect. Yes, once you've declared them brain dead, you should inform them to the mandatory authority, appropriate authority, but ask for the organ donation consent in a way that there is a whole process of doing that. If the family agrees to it, fine. If the family doesn't agree to it, that's also fine. So I think those two processes need to be decoupled. Once we decouple it, it's easy.
Can I add something to it? Yeah, why brainstem death certificate is required in our countries for two reasons, not just for donating organs from deceased donors. One is we are short of ICU beds, and there are many occasions where doctors shy away from declaring brain death and continue the patient on ventilators, which is actually a huge waste of our nation's resources. The second thing is there are many hospitals in the private sector. These are accusations which have come from the place where I work in Kerala, where corporate hospitals keep maintain a patient on ventilator, which is not going to help the patient come back to his life. So the kind of futility that happens both in the national government sector as well as the private sector of resources going in the wrong direction should be stopped. And that's where the relevance of brainstem death certification lies. Thank you.
I think it is where some states have taken dominance. Like I think Kerala has taken an initiative wherein you can withdraw ventilatory support to somebody who's brain dead. But we must understand health is a state subject, and like in Delhi and NCR, we cannot do that. If I declare a patient as brain dead, and if I want to withdraw unofficially, if each one of us do a few things like do not resuscitate, withdraw support, but we cannot withdraw the ventilatory support. So I hope DGHS and other stakeholders take a decision on this so that all states is like one nation, one policy. So we should be at the same page on this issue. Very, very important issue.
So, sir, it is legal all across the country. If you are dead enough to donate, you are dead enough for a ventilator to be switched off. The thing is, you need to declare them dead and sign the death certificate. Once you sign the death certificate, patient died at so and so time, there is no problem in stopping the ventilator. No. In fact, if this case goes to the court, the judge will punish us like anything for not withdrawing the case. But I take sir's point, and I'm not trying to counter him. It needs to be written somewhere simply so that doctors who are not sort of into this, we are there into this all day and all night. So we can do it. We know that we can talk on a stage and people might listen to us. But for a common intensivist, common neurologist, common neurosurgeon, what Kerala has done is very nice. I think each state, if it just writes down simple things that please go ahead and withdraw therapy, it will become very easy. No doctor will be questioned. But right now, the law as it stands, if you're dead enough to be donating, you're dead enough for the ventilator to be withdrawn.
Yeah, I just want to inform everybody Dr. Anil, I think, want to say the same thing, is that there is Supreme Court case going on, like yesterday or before yesterday was a thing, and the Supreme Court has given the mandate to the government of India that there should be uniformity of all the rules and regulations related to the organ donations and this thing across the country. So the law cannot be separate, that Kerala has passed, so it is Kerala law, and Maharashtra has passed, is Maharashtra law. The law will be, and the rules regulation will be uniform across the country. It is in the Supreme Court, and I think Chief Justice and one more judge, they have directed the government to respond to it. Dr. Anil can elaborate further on that.
Uh,
Yeah.
In ministry, already work is going on in this regard. We understand that there are problems. So there are three definitions of death in our law. So we are already on the job to come up with a definition which is inclusive of both the things. One is cardiorespiratory death, which we all do, and then is the brainstem death. So we are coming up with this unified definition, either this or this. Any one of will be taken as death, but it is in process. I think in coming few days we will be coming up with single definition of death. Then things will be settled down.
Thank you so much to everybody who contributed to the question. I request Dr. Krishna Kumar, Director NOTTO, to kindly felicitate our speaker for his great address. Thank you, everyone. Can we please have a huge round of applause? With that, I would like to invite our next speaker on stage, Dr. Anil Kumar. Dr. Anil Kumar is currently the Additional Deputy Director General at the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. Sir has had more than 30 years of experience in central health services. Sir has also been the Nodal Officer for THOTA 1994 and is also the head of the National Organ Transplant Program, Government of India. Sir is currently working in the areas of blood transfusion services, health regulation and vaccine production. I welcome Sir.
Good morning. Thanks to Lady Harding and this program organized by NOTTO in collaboration with Lady Harding regarding very important topic related to brainstem death training and workshop. So thank you very much. Good morning to all. Yes. This data which is shown, this is just our estimates, and these are estimates which have been given by experts, and that we require around 2 lakh kidneys every year, and we are doing only 10,000. So this kind of data is just an estimate, but what are the issues that we are facing? We have a high burden of diseases which cause organ failure. Then we have lack of awareness. Then we have brainstem death certification, identification and certification not happening in our institutions. That should be happening. Infrastructure availability, particularly in the government sector. Gaps in the registry. Everybody is not giving the data to national registry, which is to be maintained by central government. Then we have issues with the transportation of organs across the country because we have disparities in the availability of facilities, and we require transportation of organs. So only limited support is provided by government for transportation, and only the rich recipients, they are able to afford transportation. Then trading still continues to be a concern, high cost of transplantation. And there are certain administrative issues. We have SOTOs now established across states, but some of them are not functioning well. So India as such is number 3rd in the total number of transplantation in the world.
After USA and China, this is 2021 data. And this brick red bar is the deceased donor transplantation. The proportion of the deceased donor transplantation in India, if you see, it is very small as compared to the total number of transplantation. Living donor transplantation is very high in India. So that needs to change. We need to be doing more of deceased donor transplantation as we have in other countries. So we have roughly 80 to 85% is living donor transplantation, 15 to 20% is deceased donor transplantation, 70 to 80% of the work is being done in private hospitals, and 20 to 30% in government hospitals, depending upon the variabilities across the states. That is the range. This is the data. If we see total number of organ transplants which have been done over the years from 2013 to 21, this is how we have progressed. We reached maximum up to 12,666 total number of transplantation 2019. This is the data has been reported to national organization, that is NOTTO. And then we have total number of deceased donor organ transplantation. Again, if we see the data, we could reach up to, which are coming from the deceased donor, the organ transplants which are coming from the deceased donor, we could reach maximum up to 2,265. So that is and these are the organ-wise data. If we see kidney, liver, heart, and lung. Organ-wise total transplantation. This is total transplantation. Again, organ-wise deceased donor transplantation is also reflected in this chart, and organ-wise living donor transplantation is also reflected in another chart. So basically, the trends are almost similar. We had a decline in the number of transplantation during the COVID pandemic. That decline is very sharp. We can see that. And then there has been again a surge after the COVID pandemic has been controlled. So this slide has already been shown by Dr. Mathur that we have the states, there is a variability in the deceased donor transplantation across the states. So we have certain states, mainly the states which are in the western part of the country, southern part of the country, they are doing the better in terms of deceased donor transplantation. This is the variability again organ-wise. This is again variability. If we see that these charts are also showing that most of the organ-wise transplantation are being done better in the southern and western part of the country. So then we have a legal framework through which we are regulating organ donation and transplantation. There is a robust law. Since 1994, it is there. And I'm not going to the entire because somebody will be covering it. But we, in the 2011 amendment, the central government was given a mandate to establish a national networking and maintain a national registry. These are the two mandates which are highlighted at the lowest level, which have been given to the central government. And to fulfill those mandates, this National Organ Transplant Program has been initiated since November 2010, and initially with the establishment of the national organization and expanded to include further regional and state level components. Basically, what are the aims of the program? We have first is the prevention and promotion. Basically, we want to prevent the organ failure. So for that, we have health promotion and prevention. That is the one strategy that has to be done in all our awareness activities that we carry out under this program. Then second is to increase the deceased organ and tissue donation. Then third is augmentation of the transplantation, especially the infrastructure part in infrastructure and manpower in government sector, because we have lack of infrastructure and trained manpower availability, especially in government sector. Then improving the transplant outcomes. We are not getting data in the national registry for the outcomes. So we want to know how we are performing. So we need cooperation from all the hospitals that they should be giving us the data on the outcomes of the transplant that we are doing. Then we want to run a uniform and sustainable program, as already Dr. Mathur mentioned about the Supreme Court directions also, and training and research. Training of all sorts of manpower and carry out further advancements if they are required. We have implementation framework under the program. For the program, the role of the central government, including the national organization, is defining the rules, policies, and guidelines. And then we also have to establish this network that already and maintain a national registry. And we also are appropriate authority for union territories. Director General of Health Services is the appropriate authority for all union territories except Delhi. For Delhi, we have Secretary Health, Government of Delhi. Then institution, we under this at the central level, we have directorate, we have NOTTO, ROTO, and SOTOs, and a national registry. The role of state government is basically they have an appropriate authority, that is the licensing authority for all the hospitals, and even investigating all kind of activities, illegal activities if they are reported. They have the power of civil court, and they are also required to maintain state registry of donor and recipients and establish SOTO, which is supported by government, but state government has to establish and run that SOTO. Institutional mechanism in the state government, we have state health department, SOTO, and hospitals and tissue banks which are in the SOTO. So this is the organizational framework and the organ allocation system that is provided under the program. We have now 17 SOTOs established, and we have 708 hospitals which are part of this network. So 1 NOTTO, 5 regional organizations, ROTOs, and 17 state level organizations, and 708 hospitals part of this national network. And patient registration is done by the hospital. The user and ID passwords are given by NOTTO, and registration is done at the level of the hospital by the transplant coordinator of the hospital, and that ID to that patient who requires a donor organ is given by the NOTTO, and that ID is unique for that particular patient. Once the donation happens, whenever a deceased donor is available, the information has to go to the respective SOTO, and then allocation is done in this way. First, within the hospital list, one kidney needs to be shared to the common pool, then it goes to the state list, then if not utilized within the state, then to the regional list, and then to the national list, and the organ can be allocated even to a person of Indian origin in that order, and a foreigner also if there are no other takers all over India. So this is the way the hospitals which are registered, they are mainly, you can see their maximum number of registration of hospitals from Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, Gujarat, and Delhi. So these are the states where the hospital. So what are the main components of the National Organ Transplant Program? We have a National Transplantation of Human Organs and Tissues Act and National Program Cell in the Directorate, which carries out the functions which have been entrusted to the Directorate. Then we have, this is the how the another component is the networking organization. So that I've already talked about. We have national, regional, and state level organizations, and various 708 hospitals which are also part of this network. These are the basically the NOTTO, ROTO, and SOTO. These are the governing bodies for the deceased organ donation, and they have almost similar roles, but the roles they basically at the national level, roles are more in the form of prescribing the policy guidelines, protocols, SOPs, technical guidelines. All these are given by the NOTTO. At the regional level, they are basically the mentor institutes for the states which are covered by each regional organization, and state level organizations are the mainly the organizations which are maintaining the waiting list and allocating the organs within the state. NOTTO assigns the unique ID, maintains the registry, and overall coordinates the network. So then we have, these are the manpowers which are provided under the program for NOTTO, ROTO, and then we have for the registry, already talked about. Regarding the health promotion and disease prevention, we talk about to promote healthy lifestyle, no tobacco, no alcohol, and vaccination for hepatitis B, control of irrational use of pharmaceutical drugs. Today, DG has talked about that in his talk, and we carry out various awareness activity, including social media activities. So these are the other components of the program. There are certain grant in aids which are available under the program. In these two slides, I'll be talking about those. And for the ROTO regional organization, we have a non-recurring grant of 68 lakh rupees, which is initial grant. Then for recurring grant per annum is 1.05 crore. For each SOTO, we have 36 lakh non-recurring and 48 lakh recurring every year. For setting up of a new retrieval center, 75 lakh rupees. For infrastructure and equipment, for setting up of a new transplant center, 1.5 crore. For again infrastructure and equipment, not for manpower. Upgradation of existing facility, we have 75 lakh rupees. Biomaterial center, it is only for regional level center, 1 crore rupees for biomaterial center. Transplant coordinators, we are giving 35,000 per month to each coordinator, along with support for computers and operational expenses. Immunosuppressant therapies, this is post-transplant, 10,000 rupees per month to each BPL transplant recipient who has undergone transplant in a government institution. For dignified funeral of the deceased donor, whether he is above poverty line or below poverty line, it is 10,000 per donor. Then maintenance of the body of the deceased donor, for maintenance cost, when one organ comes to a government institution, it is 1 lakh per donation. And IEC activities grants are given as per the proposals which are received from states. Basically, what we are working on, we are working for augmentation of the infrastructure. We want at least one multi-organ transplant center in each state, establish organ retrieval centers in the trauma centers, and for skilling, training and capacity building, we want transplant units to be set up in medical colleges, skill centers